Welcome to EPG Pathshala. The subject we are looking at is computer science. We are looking at computer networks. So, in this module, we will be continuing with our overview on network layer. So, we will start looking at the IP protocol. So, we will look at some of the basic characteristics of the IP protocol. So, we know that the IP protocol is the protocol, the network layer protocol in the TCP IP model. So, we need to be looking at it in detail. So, we will start off first with the service model that is used by IP. So, we will look at how addresses are handled in IP and the basic segment format. We will try to understand how the various fields in the IP segment are used. And we will also look at how basic IP datagram forwarding gets done. Okay. So, this is what we will try to look at in today's module. So, if you look at the network layer as such, or the entire network layer stack as such, you can see that there are a number of protocols that we have at the network layer. Predominant of them is of course the IP protocol, which is the forwarding protocol. In addition to the IP protocol, there are other protocols that are used for routing purposes, for path selection and routing, which is examples of these are RIP, RIP, OSPF, BGP and so on. So, which are responsible for constructing the forwarding table, which is of course used by the IP protocol. And there are also error reporting and signaling protocols that are used, which is the ICMP protocol. You can look at this as a companion protocol for the IP protocol. Okay. So, this is so what we are looking at now is the IP protocol, which is used in the TCP IP protocol suite. Okay. So, as we said, the IP protocol is a datagram based scenario. So, it is a datagram network that we are talking about when we talk of an IP network. So, there is no call setup at the network layer. So, routers do not maintain any state about the end-to-end connections. Each packet is treated individually. Okay. There is no network level concept of a connection. And every packet therefore carries complete information, that is the full destination address, so that it can be forwarded from the source to the destination through the various routers. So, one end we send datagrams, the network is responsible for sending it to the destination, and the destination all it has to do is receive the datagrams at this network layer. Okay, this is what is expected. So, the characteristics of a datagram network are something that we know. So, we need to understand this to be able to see what kind of service IP actually provides for us. So, in a datagram network, one of the first things that we know is that a host can send a packet at any time, anywhere, anytime. Okay. So, because a packet can turn up at any switch and it can be immediately forwarded by looking at the forwarding table, of course, assuming that the forwarding table has been correctly populated. And there is when a packet is sent into the network, the end system, the host has no idea about the network or the destination, right. It does not know whether the routers are okay, whether the network is up, whether the destination machine is up, is it ready to receive packets, none of this information it knows. So, you just send packets into the network. And again different packets can take different paths. That is because each packet is forwarded independently, there is no concept of a connection setup. Okay. So, that is something which also means again that if a switch or a link were to fail, you can find alternate paths and route the packets around those failure locations. Okay. So, these are some of the characteristics of a datagram network that we have already looked at. Now, the reason we need to understand this is to understand what kind of service does IP provide, because if you understand what kind of service IP provides, then it is easy for us to relate to why TCP or UDP on top of IP provide the kind of services that they actually do. So, if you look at the IP service model, since it is a datagram based model, we know that it is a connectionless model for data delivery. Okay, it is a connectionless model, that is the first point to note. And second thing is, because a connectionless model, we know that it is an unreliable service. But what IP tries to do is, it does not say I am providing you unreliable service, instead it says I will provide you something called a best effort delivery. So, which means that in spite of the fact that there is no guarantee as such from the network, still IP will try to do its maximum to make sure that packets are delivered correctly to the destinations. Okay. So, which basically means that packets could be lost, packets may be delivered out of order. So, duplicate copies of a packet can also be delivered. So, packets can be delayed for a long time, but still you will try to deliver the packets. So, the basic point is some delivery is likely to happen. But if there are duplicate packets, or if they are delivered out of order, or if they are delayed for a very long time, those things will have to be taken care of by the end systems. So, which is why you can see that transport layer such as the TCP protocol, the transport layer tries to take care of these things. Okay. So, the best effort delivery says that packets may be dropped. So, no guarantee that packets will not be dropped, but we will try to make sure that packets are delivered to the end system, okay, as far as possible. Okay, that is the idea. And one of the important aspects of the IP service model is it provides us a global addressing scheme so that you can identify all hosts in any network in the entire inter-networked world, okay, in the complete network. We have different networks and we have different routers connecting up these networks, we have different hosts on each of these networks. What IP provides us as part of its addressing scheme is that it provides us a global addressing scheme where you can identify a network and a host within a network. Okay. So, this addressing scheme is a very important aspect of the IP service model. Okay. And the forwarding is based, that forwarding model that it supports is a next hop forwarding model, that is based on the destination value which is there in every packet, every router will forward it to the next hop, will determine which is the next hop on which this packet has to be sent. So, it is a hop based decision that takes place at every router. Of course, it is based on the destination address. Okay. So, this is the basic service model of IP. Okay. So, we will see how this service model actually spans out. Okay. Okay. So, let us first take a look at the IP addresses, because that is the key to identifying the nodes in a network. Okay. So, we said that it provides us a globally unique address for host identification. Now, normally the link layer addresses that we have, right, the addresses that we have at the link layer, they are flat addresses. But what IP addressing does is at the network layer, it gives us a hierarchical address. So, what we mean by a hierarchical address is that it has a network part plus a host part. So, the complete address can be broken down into multiple parts. So, basically we break it up into two parts at least, the network part and the host part. Okay. So, the IP version 4 addresses are 32 bits wide. These 32 bit wide addresses obviously give us different combinations. It gives us about 4 billion IP addresses. Okay. These IP addresses are divided into different classes. We have different classes that we talk about. We say class A, class B and class C, okay, different types of addresses. Okay, we will look at that later. And this 32 bit address, because it's a 32 bit number, it is very difficult for us to remember that number as such. So, we use a dotted decimal notation to represent these IP addresses. So, your 32 bit number basically is broken down into 8 bits at a time, and these 8 bits, so we represent each 8 bit by means of a decimal number. So, each of these decimal numbers can go from 0 to 255, okay, your complete range of numbers that can be given with the 8 bit number. So, 0 to 255 will be there. So, we will have 4 decimal numbers each ranging from, so basically all these numbers says that this is a 32 bit number. So, you just expand that number to a corresponding binary representation and you get the corresponding 32 bit IP address. So, I said that we use something called a class based IP address which is supported in IPv4. We also have classless addressings, we will look at that later, but initially it is useful to understand the evolution of IP. So, initially IP started off with a class based IP addressing. So, in a class based IP addressing, what is done is that we divide the entire 32 bits that we have into a network part and a host part. Okay. Now, this separation into classes is basically to take care of networks of different sizes. Okay. We look at how this basically happens. So, if you take a class A network, in a class A network, the first bit is a 0, okay, that is basically the identification that it is a class A network, and in a class A network, the first 8 bits, that is including the 0, first 8 bits is the network part of the address, that gives you the network identification, and the rest of the bits, 24 bits here, they identify the host part of the address. So, if you were to represent this in our dotted decimal notation, starting from this first bit, this first number that we have here, the first byte can take values from 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 all the way up to 0 all ones. So, which means it can take a value from 0 to 127. So, 0 dot and the host value can take all possible values. So, starting from 0.0.0.0 all the way up to 127.255.255.255, this is the range of addresses that are given for class A. Out of this, the 0 to 127, that is the first byte indicates which network it is, and the rest of the bits indicate the node address. So, which means in how many networks can I have? I can have 0 to 127, 128 different networks are possible, but each network can have the 24 bits for the address. So 2 to the power of 24 different hosts, okay, which means every network can have 2 to the power of 24 hosts. So the host addresses will range for each network from 0.0.0 to 255.255.255. Okay. So this is an example of a class A is to cater to networks which are very large. Okay, we only have few such networks because number of network IDs are small, but each network can have a large number of hosts. So if you understand this idea, it's easy to understand what how the class B and C addresses are also defined. A class B, you can say, is for medium sized addresses. If you look at a class A as a large size network, class B is a medium sized network. So in a medium sized network, you can see that it starts with a 10, and the first 16 bits identify the network part of the address, next 16 bits identify the host part of the address. So 2 power 16 networks can be there, each network having 2 power 16 hosts. Okay. So the range of addresses for this will be 128.0.0.0 to 191.255.255.255. Now 191, because we know that the first 2 bits will always have to be a 1 and a 0. Okay. So this next values can go from 000 all the way up to 1. So from 128 to 191 will be a class B address. A class C address is for small sized network. So 8 bits only are used for the host part. So each network can have only 256 nodes, but number of networks, such networks you can support is very large, 2 to the power of 24. So, and of course starts with 110, this is fixed. So you can say 2 to the power of 21 such networks can be supported. Each network can have 256 nodes in it. Okay, so this is for a small. So you can look at a small, medium, large. Okay. Other than this, we also have support for multicasting. So multicast, remember, is for groups, right? You can have groups that are identified. So one address for each multicast group. So multicast addresses start with a prefix value of 1110, and the rest of the bits are used as multicast address. The value 1111 is kept as a reserved address. So 224 to 239 is used for multicast addresses, and 240 to 255 are reserved. So with this understanding of the addressing scheme, let's look at how different interfaces get the addresses and so on. So if you look at this, we said that 32-bit identifier is used for the host plus the network, right. So if you look at different nodes which belong to the same network, you will find that their network prefixes are common. So if you take this network, so 223.1.1.1, this is 223.1.1.2, this is 223.1.1.3. Now 223 we know is a class C address, which means the first 3 bytes will identify the network part. So you can see the first 3 bytes are same in all these 3, and 1, 2, 3 are the 3 numbers which distinguish the hosts which are there in this network. Okay. This router, if you look at, is also connected to this network. So on this interface it has an address of 223.1.1.4. On this network, you can see that this is a different network. This network has an address of 223.1.2, right. So all nodes on this network have a network component of 223.1.2, but they can have different node addresses 1, 9, 2 and so on. Okay. And this router is connected to this network also. So you can see that the router actually will have multiple interfaces, and on each interface it has different network IDs, because the networks that it is connected to, or the interfaces are different. So you can see that this will have 223.1.3.27, this is 223.1.2.9. So because this is a 2 network, this is a 3 network and so on. Okay. So this is how the network, IDs will be given, and this is how we need to interpret them. Okay. A router, you can see, can have multiple interfaces. A host normally may have 1 or 2 interfaces. For instance, may be connected to a wired network, it may be connected also to a wireless network. So in which case, for a wired network it can have a different interface, for a wireless network it can have a different IP address, maybe on 2 different networks. Okay. So this is basically what we do. So we can say an IP address is associated with each interface. For every interface that a host or a router has, for each interface it will have an IP address, because interface is the one that is connected to the network. So for every network that it is connected, it will have that network component part of the address will be there, and it will have a host part of the address. So how are the interfaces actually connected? So the interfaces are basically connected by means of switches, right. You could have wired Ethernet interfaces connected by means of Ethernet switches, or you could have wireless Wi-Fi interfaces connected by means of Wi-Fi base stations. So both these things are possible. Now in addition to these addresses that we talked about, there are also some special IP addresses which are used, some reserved for some special purposes. Okay. This is just a very small list of that. There are many such special addresses which are used. Okay. A host ID of 0, okay, it denotes the network itself. It basically says, which means we are talking about the complete network address is 0, okay, it indicates that just belongs to, it's just some node on this network. Okay, and if a host ID of FF, that is if you use an all Fs, it indicates that it is a broadcast address for this particular network. Okay, 127 dot something is used as a loopback address, and which means that a packet sent out with a value of 127 will not really go out into the network at all. It will be looped back and sent back to the same host. Similarly, we use the 10 dot series and the 192 dot series and so on for local use. That is, when I want to use the IP protocol or applications using IP protocol, but on a local network, or say for an intranet kind of a situation, then we make use of these series of addresses. So, many such special addresses are also used. Okay, it will be good for you to check them out. Now, coming to the packet format, okay, it is always useful for us to understand a protocol by looking at its packet format. So, that will give us a lot of information about what the protocol does. So, if you look at the IPv4 packet format, this version, okay, version 4 for this particular example, we also have version 6 IP now. Okay. Now, it is followed by a header length field, okay, which is which tells you the length of this header in 32-bit words. Okay. So, you can see that the header itself has some fixed component plus some variable component which are basically for the options. Okay. So, if there are options, I need to know where the header ends and where the data begins. So, that is specified by means of this header length field. Okay. Then there is a type of service field which tells you what is the type of service that this datagram packet is expected to receive. Okay. It was not really widely used in the original V4, but it has been used by other protocols like differentiated services and so on, which use this information to provide kind of quality of service for IP packets. Okay. Then we have a length field, 16-bit field. So, this tells us the number of bytes that are carried in this datagram. So, this field being 16 bits, you can have 2 power 16, 64K can be the maximum size of a IP datagram. Then we have a field called identification, which is a sequence number field, which is used as an identification for this packet. Now, this is useful when we have something called fragmentation. We will come to what fragmentation is. Okay. Similarly, there are a set of flags and a field called offset, which again is used for when fragmentation gets done. Okay. Then there is a TTL field, which is a time to live field. Now, a time to live field is normally interpreted as the time for which this packet is considered to be alive in this network. It is normally interpreted, actually it is implemented more as a number of hops through which this datagram has travelled. So, it normally set to a particular value and you keep decrementing this TTL value. So, when the TTL value goes to 0, at every router, at every hop you decrement the TTL value by 1. So, when it goes to 0, you drop the packet. So, basically this is to take care of packets which are looping around in a network due to some error or something. So, we do not want packets to be just running around in the network forever, right. So, once the TTL value goes to 0, you will drop the packet. And of course, when you drop the packet, IP will use the ICMP protocol to inform the sender that it has actually dropped this packet for this particular reason. Okay. So, then we have a protocol field which is used, basically it is a field which tells you whether this packet is to be delivered to the TCP protocol or the UDP protocol. So, it is a demultiplexing key in that sense. Okay. Then we have a checksum field which is used only for the IP header. Checksum calculation is done just as it is done for UDP and TCP, same ones complement based addition. Okay. That is the same idea that is used. Okay. And then of course, you have the 32-bit destination address and the source addresses, and then there are some variables options which are specified. Okay. That is followed by the actual data. Okay. This is the basic packet format of the IPv4 packet. Now, coming to this idea of fragmentation reassembly that we just mentioned. Okay. Now, what IP does is that it has to send packets through various links. Okay. And when a packet is sent from an initial link, there is no information about what exactly is the size of the packets that can be carried by the intermediate links. Okay. So, that is let us explain that a little further. So, every network link, okay, we say has something called an MTU, that is the maximum transfer size or a transmission unit that you have, okay, which is the largest possible frame that can be carried on a particular link. Now, different link types will have different MTUs. Ethernet can carry 1500 bytes, FDDI can carry 4500 bytes and so on. Okay. So, different links will have different capacities. So, if I am sending a large packet on a particular link, okay, and it has to go through a router to another link which actually can carry only a smaller sized packet. So, what we will have to do is you will have to break that down into smaller packets. Now, that is taken care of by IP, and that is part of its best effort delivery service. So, what IP says is I will do my best to deliver the packet, right. So, even though there are links of different capacity, IP says yes, this is a larger datagram, but let me see, I will try and see if I can break it down into smaller parts, and I will also reassemble it and give it to you when I have to give it to the destination. So, in order to do this fragmentation, in order to break it up, it needs to have some fields which allow it to identify the fragments and which also allow it to put them back together. Okay, so which is why it has some special fields for doing fragmentation. So, a large IP datagram will be divided, fragmented within the network, and this is handled totally by the IP protocol. Okay. So, one datagram can become several datagrams, right. So, one packet coming in goes out as 3 different datagrams in this case, okay, and it will go through the routers as 3 different datagrams, and at the final destination it will be reassembled to form a single datagram as such. Okay. So, a single datagram was sent into the network as 3, went into the network as 3 different packets, at the end machine it is reassembled. Okay. And now the header bits that are there in the fragments, they are used to do this reassembly. So, we will take a look at how that is done. This is a very important aspect of the IP protocol. So, as I said, the MTU can vary. Ethernet has 1500 bytes, FTDI has 4500 bytes and so on. So, the strategy that is used is the following. So, the router will check when a datagram arrives, okay, whether the size of the datagram is less than the size of the MTU. If it is less, it will be able to forward it. But if the datagram size is greater than the MTU, then it will have to fragment it. Okay? That is the point that we need to note here. So, the reassembly is done at the receiving host. So, that is the strategy, which means we do not do reassembly anywhere in between. Okay? There are good reasons for that. And all the datagrams, these fragments, okay, they will carry the same identifier in the identifier field. Okay. Remember, we have an identifier field in each datagram. So, each fragment belonging to a particular datagram which has been fragmented will have the same identifier field. And each of the fragments by themselves, they are self-contained datagrams. That is, it is an IP packet by itself. So, it means it can be routed independently, right. So, that is another very important aspect. And if one particular fragment goes missing, then IP can't do anything about it. It does not try to recover from missing fragments. Okay. So, again, part of its best effort service. It will do its best, but something goes totally wrong, it cannot do anything about it. Okay. So, this is the strategy used by IP. So, we will take an example of how this is done. So, just to give you an overview, if I have a 1400 byte packet coming in, it has to be sent over a PPP link which can't carry more than 512, it will have to be split into smaller packets. Okay. This is something which you do. So, a more detailed view of the same thing. Okay. So, we will take this example. So, let us say I have a 4000 byte datagram that is being sent. MTU, let us assume, is 1500 bytes. Okay. So, the initial packet, the unfragmented original packet, will have the length field set to 4000 bytes. Let us say it has an ID value of x. Okay. In the flags field, there is something called a fragment flag, okay, or a more flag as it is called, which indicates that there are more fragments which are following this. Okay. That flag is set to a value of 0. Okay. Which means there are no other fragments, just a single packet by itself. Okay. And there is another field in the IP address called the offset field. Now, this field will normally be set to 0. Now, this offset basically tells you when I fragment a packet, where exactly is this fragment when compared with the original undivided packet. Okay. What is the offset of the first field in this fragment from the beginning, from the original packet? So, that is this offset field. Now, if I take an undivided packet, obviously this packet has the complete information. So, the offset field will be 0. So, this is what you will have when you start off with the original packet. Now, when this large datagram, if it has to be sent on an MTU with 1500 bytes, it now has to be split into at least 3 smaller datagrams. So, let us look at how this split will be done and what will be the information carried in these fragments. Okay. Now, 1400 bytes was the original length, now the length will become 1500. In these 3 datagrams, you are going to carry only 1500 byte sized datagrams. The ID field you can see in all the 3 will be the same, x. Okay. Same x is copied into all the 3. So, all these 3 now we know belong to the same original packet. And if you look at the fragment flag or the more flag as it is called, this flag is set to 1 in the first fragment, 1 in the second fragment, in the last fragment it is set to 0. So, this 1 indicates that there are more fragments to come. Okay. Again, this indicates there is more fragment to come. This last fragment has a value of 0, which indicates that this is the last fragment of this particular set of fragments. Okay. And if you look at the offset field, the offset field is set to a value of 0 in the first packet. Okay. So, we will see how that is calculated. Okay. Now, one other point to note here is when I say that the length is 1500, the length is including the header. Okay. And if you look at the header, the standard header is a 20 byte header in IP. So, the actual data size that is carried in the segment will be only 1480 bytes. Okay. So, which means in this particular packet, starting from an offset of 0, that is from the first byte up to 1479. So, 1480 bytes will be carried in the data field here. Okay. So, the offset here will show 0, the length will show 1500. This means 1480 bytes are carried in this particular segment, first fragment. In the second fragment, so I know that up to 1480 bytes are carried in this, right, 1479 is carried in this. So, 1480 onwards will be the data carried in this. Okay. So, that value is what is specified in the offset field. Okay. But what is interesting to note here is that we do not specify the value 1480 as such, but you divide it by a value of 8 and specify it. This is done because this offset field that we have in the IP header, okay, that is only a 13-bit field, and with 13-bit field we can't represent a 2 power 16 number, which is likely to come when we are doing this fragmentation computation. So, what you do is, since you have only 2 power 13 bits available, you take any number you have, divide it by 8, okay, because 2 power 16 by 2 power 13 is 8, right, 2 power 3, which is 8, and you represent it as this number. So, 1480 divided by 8, that is the offset here. Okay. So, you can see similarly the next offset will be 185 to 369 would have come in the next in this field. So, 370 will be the offset for the third fragment. Okay. So, this is how the fragmentation basically gets done. Okay. So, now these 3 fragments will be the ones which arrive at the destination, and the destination now we look at the ID field, we look at the offsets and look at the fragments. So, these 3 will help it to order them and reassemble them. Even if these 3 fragments come in a different order, it can still put them back in order by looking at these fields. ID will tell you that they all belong to the same original packet. The flag will tell me whether it's a last fragment or there are more fragments to come, and these offsets will tell me if I arrange it in the ascending order of offsets depending on the length that I have, I can put back all these fragments together and get back my original datagram. Okay. So, this is something which is carried out by IP, okay, to do its fragmentation and reassembly. Now, coming to how the datagram forwarding gets done, the strategy used by IP is the following. So, there is a forwarding table that is maintained at each router. So, every datagram will contain its complete destination address, okay, and if it is directly connected to a destination network, then it will forward it to the host. If it is not directly connected to destination network, then it will forward it to some router, which is what you can see here. Interface 10 indicates that it is directly connected to the network. R1, R3 indicates it has to be forwarded to the next router. Okay. And basically when you say I am looking at the destination address, we basically look at the network number part of the destination address. Remember, destination address has network part and host part. Okay. So, the forwarding table will map the network number into the next hop. So, each host will also have a default router. So, which means that if it is not able to find a matching entry, it always send it to the default router. Okay. And each router will have a forwarding table. Okay. This is what happens. So, the steps that we have when a packet arrives are, you extract the destination address, look up the destination address in the routing table, obtain the output interface from the routing table, forward the packet. This is all that forwarding has to be done at each router. Okay. So, the forwarding algorithm, if you look at, again it is a very simple step that we are looking at. You look at the network number of the destination, you see whether it belongs to one of my interfaces, then you deliver the packet to that destination over that interface. Otherwise, you check if it is there in the forwarding table, then you deliver the packet to the next hop router. Otherwise, you deliver it to the default router. That is, if I do not find a matching entry, I will send it to my default router. Okay. So, if a host has only one interface, okay, and only a default router in its forwarding table, what this simplifies to is that you will check the network number. If it is the network number matches the same as your network number, which means on the same network, then you just send the packet directly to the destination. Otherwise, you will send it to the default router. Okay. So, this is the simple datagram forwarding algorithm which is used in IP networks. When you are looking at the routing table to do this forwarding, there are some issues that are normally considered: speed, memory requirement, then what kind of data structures are used, how fast this lookup has to take place, okay, how much of memory is required, and so on. So, there are different approaches which are used for this. You use different data structures, trie, hash, fast lookup table, some hardware implementations are also used for this, and so on. Okay. So, this is basically an overview of how the routing issues have to be handled. Okay. So, to summarize what we have covered in this module is the following: just some basics of the IP protocol, the service model that is used by IP. We have looked at how global addressing is done in IP. We looked at the packet format, and we have looked at one very important aspect of IP, which is segmentation. And then we have also looked at how IP does the forwarding mechanism. Okay. Other details of this we will look at in the subsequent modules. Thank you.